We all know that sleep is important. If you don't get enough sleep, it impairs your mental ability, your ability to learn and remember things. It affects our mood and our body's metabolism and immune system. I got a request to talk about how to sleep better without sleeping more. So let's talk about it. I've had my share of sleep issues. When I was in my teens and early 20s, I struggled with depression. Back then, sleep was an escape, and I easily slept between 9 and 12 hours a day. A few years later, the reverse happened. I started sleeping only 3 or 4 hours a day due to stress. And that was one of the reasons I burnt out when I was 27. My ability to focus and my energy levels plummeted, and it took me years to build them back up. When I had my first child, sleep became a whole new chapter, and it was a challenge to get enough sleep, with interrupted nights and nightly feedings. So I've tried a lot of sleep tips to try to get my sleep back under control and to sleep better. Today, I'll share 5 things that I've learned about sleep and that have helped me to sleep better and to feel more energized during the day without actually sleeping more hours. Welcome to Productive Introvert Community Podcast. Hi, I'm Mariela. I help introverts who work from home to have more energy and improve focus without habits that feel forced or only last 2 weeks. On this podcast, I share the things that I'm researching and that I'm learning on my mission to understand what introverts really need to feel energized and to do the things that are important to them. I'll share with you some of the science behind these ideas and everyday examples that might inspire you to live a healthier, happier life. Why is sleep important? We usually think of sleep as an off state, a passive state when the body is just resting. But it's important to realize that sleep is actually a very active state for your body. While you're sleeping, there are a lot of processes going on that your body needs to stay healthy. Some of these processes happen only when you sleep. One example are slow brain waves. These are important for memory consolidation. As far as I know, slow brain waves have been observed during sleep and also during meditation. Another important process that happens during sleep is clearing away toxins. For example, amyloid beta is removed from the brain. Amyloid beta is a naturally occurring waste product in the brain, but it's been linked to Alzheimer's disease when the amyloid beta forms plaques and can no longer be cleared. Sleep deprivation causes cognitive decline, especially around creative tasks and divergent thinking. It reduces reaction speed, similar to what you might see after a few glasses of alcohol, and it's been linked to weight gain, insulin resistance, and diabetes. Sleep isn't just one state either. While you sleep, you go through different stages of light and deep sleep. We go through 4 to 6 of these sleep cycles each night. The quality of your sleep and how well you go through the sleep cycle is an important factor for better sleep. Why a lot of introverts struggle with sleep. A lot of introverts struggle with sleep. Some of the introverts I've coached felt like they never got enough sleep. They always felt tired during the day, no matter how long they slept. One of the reasons why this happens is because introverts have different energy needs than extroverts do. While extroverts get most of their energy from interacting with other people, introverts get most of their energy from doing things by themselves. I love being with people, but as an introvert, being around other people all day can make me feel really tired. I also get overstimulated by things like traffic noises or being in a busy area for a long time. If an introvert doesn't have enough time to themselves during the day, sometimes they'll try to find that time at night and they'll give up sleep to do that. Or sometimes they'll try to sleep but struggle to fall asleep, or they wake up in the night with lots of racing thoughts keeping them awake. A lot of introverts think that if they could only sleep more, they would finally stop feeling so tired. But sleeping more is only one piece of the puzzle. If you want to get better sleep, there are a few other things to think about. Here are 5 things that helped me to get better sleep without sleeping more. Number 1, simply focusing less on sleeping more. Very similar to the introverts that I coach. In the past, I thought that sleeping more was the only thing that could help me feel less tired. I didn't understand then how to manage my energy, so I just tried to sleep off the tiredness. The Center for Disease Control, the CDC, in the US, recommends 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night for adults. Children sleep more and you sleep less as you get older. I remember telling a colleague of mine that I needed at least 9 hours to just function. I would even take naps during the day on top of that if I could. But no matter how much I slept, most days I was still feeling tired. Now I know that how much you're sleeping is only one piece of the puzzle. If you're an introvert and you don't understand your energy needs yet, it can lead to what's commonly known as the introvert hangover. Introvert hangover is when you get so overstimulated that you feel physically ill. Sleep doesn't help anymore and you need to recharge in other ways to feel good again. If you want to know more about that, go to the podcast linked in the description or on your screen about everything you need to know about the introvert hangover. So changing my mindset about sleeping more was one of the things that really helped me to sleep better, because sleeping more isn't the full picture. Number 2, training myself to fall asleep quickly. Especially when I was going through burnout, it was hard for me to fall asleep. I would lie awake for hours and I would often wake up in the night with racing thoughts. A lot of the times I was reliving conversations that I had with people weeks or maybe sometimes even years before. On the other hand, this triggered my inner critic who would point out all the things I should have said and I should have done. I would lie awake for hours just going through all of this in my head. I felt like there was no way to stop it. I thought that falling asleep was something I had no control over. I could get myself to bed, but what happened once I was there was up for grabs. Until one day, I read an article about Navy SEALs who trained themselves to fall asleep fast. They needed to rest whenever they could when they were on mission, so learning how to fall asleep fast was really important. What stuck with me is that the SEALs would go to airports and they'd sit in the chairs of the open terminals to practice falling asleep. If you've traveled, you know how uncomfortable those seats are, and that was the point. They'd find the most uncomfortable position and use that to practice. After training, they could fall asleep in under 3 minutes. This was incredibly eye-opening to me because I realized that what I thought I had no control over was actually a skill that I could learn. I could learn to fall asleep fast. Later, when I became pregnant, I knew that this was what I wanted to work on. With a baby on the way, I knew that I'd be up all hours of the night and I wasn't going to get much sleep anyway. So if I could fall back asleep fast, I would be able to get as much sleep as I could. I started practicing and it worked. I successfully taught myself to fall asleep in under 3 minutes. One of the things I did was count down slowly from 180 down to 0. And I would usually remember getting down to 60. I couldn't find the original article, but I found a similar article that has a couple of other practical tips to help fall asleep fast. I'll link to it in the description for you. Number 3, keeping a regular sleep schedule. You've probably heard this tip before, keep a regular sleep schedule. For me, it is one of the things that makes a big difference. I'm usually in bed by 10 p.m. and I'm up between 5 and 7 a.m. with our son who's almost 5 now. I try to keep to that rhythm most of the time, also on weekends, but I don't stress out about it. When my son was younger, it was harder to keep to a regular sleep schedule. Some days I might be in bed later, and that's okay. At least once a week, my partner and I will watch a movie together after my son's in bed, or I might travel to another city to meet friends for dinner. And on those days, it might be midnight or 1 a.m. before I'm ready for bed. I know that keeping my regular sleep and wake times helps me to feel more energized, but if it doesn't happen or I'm particularly tired after a tough night, I just take it a bit easy and adjust my expectations for that day. Number 4, paying attention to what I do during the day. This one is a bit counterintuitive. When you look for tips on how to sleep better, you'll usually see things like going to bed at the same time each night, sleeping in a dark room, making your room cold, leaving your phone in the other room. But one of the things that actually has made the biggest difference for me is paying attention to what I was doing around taking mental breaks and doing things that made me feel inspired. If you're an introvert, you may need more mental breaks than you realize. Introverts are really good observers. They typically pay attention to a lot of details with the things that are happening around them. That's natural, and most introverts are really good at that. What we forget is that all that information, it needs to be processed. Introverts typically do that by self-reflection or by quiet time when they're alone. Taking mental breaks during the day can help you to process your thoughts and emotions around the things that happen. When I was younger, I always forced myself to do the sensible thing. On days that I felt that I really needed a break and everything in my body was screaming to go outside, I'd go to the library and study. Yes, I was that person. For me, if I don't have enough time to process during the day, I'll often end up processing at night, and that's when I lie awake in bed with racing thoughts. Then there's feeling inspired. Forcing ourselves to do things all the time negatively affects our energy levels, our creativity, and our overall happiness. These days, I intentionally seek out ways to feel inspired, and I encourage my coaching clients to do the same. I'm fortunate that my work is very inspiring to me, so I get a lot of inspiration that way. But there are always days when you're not feeling it. When that happens now, I listen. I'll go for a bike ride after dropping my son off at school, or I'll take my laptop to a cafe to work instead of working from home. On some days, I cancel all my work plans and take a spontaneous day off. Even as a business owner, I do that because I know that if I give myself a little rope today, I'll be flying tomorrow. Another way that people like to process is through their hobbies. Someone I coached loved making jewelry, and that was her way to mentally recharge. Arts and crafts, gaming, exercising, being out in nature, cooking, journaling, meditating, praying. These are all different ways that people use to process their thoughts and emotions. Of course, there has to be a balance here, right? If we only do the things that feel good all the time, we might never get a chance to build a truly fulfilling life. Although these ideas are simple, they're not always easy to do. It can be tricky to figure out what works for you, to mentally recharge and to feel inspired while still staying on top of your responsibilities. And you may need to experiment a little bit to find your sweet spots. If you want help figuring this out, then I'd love to help. I invite you to get on a free exploration call to help you discover a willpower-free way to have more energy and focus, no matter how busy or overwhelmed you are. You can find the link to book a call with me in the description. Number 5, intermittent fasting. A change that I made to my eating habits is intermittent fasting, which for me means no more food after 7 p.m. Before we had kids, we would usually have dinner around 7. When I was still studying, sometimes it would be 9 p.m. before I got home and had dinner. With our toddler, we try to have dinner together as often as we can, and we'll sit with him to eat around 5 p.m. I noticed that when I didn't eat after 7, I felt more energized and much sharper when I woke up the next morning. I can have tea or water, but no food or sugary drinks. On days that I did eat after 7, I felt sluggish and foggy-brained the next morning, even after 8 hours of sleep. It's like I'm getting more out of my sleep. This does make sense if you think about that the body is actively clearing out toxins during sleep. Meals after 7 p.m. for me mean that my body has to work extra hard to digest the meal, and that takes up resources from the other processes that are going on. Again, I don't beat myself up. I try to stick to the 7 p.m. rule on most nights, but if I forget or if I have a snack at night, that's okay. On date nights, we'll always have some chips or even a piece of cake, and that's fine. I used to stress about it a lot. If I wasn't putting in 100% effort, then I was failing. At least that's what my inner critic used to say. Now that I understand the inner critic better, the role that it has, and how to calm down the inner critic, it's much less stressful. Knowing how to calm down the inner critic has been a big part of this, and that's also something that I teach my clients. Ultimately, we all need good sleep, but the trick to sleeping better isn't always where you think it might be. Sleeping enough hours every day is important, but the quality of your sleep is more important than most of us realize. There are lots of things you can do, including small changes to your habits during the day that lead you to have better quality sleep and to have more energy and focus the next day. It's okay to enjoy life. You can still be successful and build a great life. If you found this podcast helpful, share it with someone who might want to know more about sleep. Thank you for hanging out with me today, and I'll see you soon. Thank you for listening to the Productive Introvert Community Podcast. If you're an introverted entrepreneur and you're ready to thrive in your own way, then connect with me on thefrankermessage.com/contact.